Hello everyone, how's it going? And welcome to today's Wild Rift video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you all the go-to new runes to go on AD carries in the new patch. We're only a few days away now until the new patch, so I think everyone's starting to get really excited and starting to theory craft with the new runes, what the best runes to take on AD carries, etc, etc. Now this video is focused on just AD carries because I'm an ADC main, and I think a lot of my viewers are also ADC mains. But if you do want to check out other builds and other rune setups for the other champions, you can do so by clicking the link in the description, which will take you to my Google sheet. All you have to do is, like, you got two different tabs at the bottom here. You just click on champion builds and you can scroll through every single champion. Every single champion is set up. Every single champion is ready to go, just waiting for the website to be updated to update it on the actual website. But then we also have the AD carries, which I'll be talking about in a little bit more detail today. Now, before we get into the individual champions, first, let's just talk about just the general state of runes and how I think it's going to affect AD carries. I think the precision tree is going to be the go-to tree for every single AD carry in the new rune setup. As you can see, everything is yellow. Everything is also green for secondary runes, which I'll talk about in a second. But precision tree is just the best primary rune tree to go for AD carries because you have so many good runes. There's so many good options as well, whether it be, coup de grace, giant slayer, alacrity, tenacity, bloodline as well. Then you have brutal as your primary rune tree, which is really, really nice. And the reason being for that is that the domination tree doesn't really have anything to benefit AD carries. Some AD carries can go for sudden impact, but I think it's more of a one-off secondary rune than anything else. Shield bash is just on too long of a cooldown, sorry, and it only really benefits you when you get shielded by an ally, like an enchanter support, which sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't. And then Scorch as well, you're never really going to be hitting people with abilities. Obviously, as an ADC, you're more focused around auto attacks. Same with the second choices for domination. Empowered attack just doesn't have enough damage and has way too long of a cooldown, every 10 seconds. Not really worth it. And also, you could just attack a minion and just completely miss out on this because it just says the next attack, which kind of sucks. Cheap shot, again, can work on some champions, but again, I think it's like the one-off niche pick, really. Mark of the week as well. Don't really get a lot of extra damage from that. Eyeball collector will just take way too long to stack. You need 10 kills to get like 10 AD or 20 AP, and also gain like an extra 5 AD from gaining stats, which, to be fair, is not really worth it. 10 kills is a lot, and very, very rarely you get to 10 kills. Genius Hunter, item ability case, not really worth it. Zombie War could be quite interesting. I think this would be really, really strong on supports and junglers, but for ADCs, not really that good. But precision tree, as I mentioned, your first row, you got brutal you could take, you got triumph you can take. Gathering Storm is probably too slow on AD carries, but these two runes are absolutely great. The second choices, you can go for any of these, to be fair. I think Last Stand is really good for you against any assassins or for some more melee orientated ADCs like Nilah and Samira. Giant Slayer is really good when you have enemy champions that could be building bonus health. Any sort of bruisers or tanks on the enemy team, you just take Giant Slayer. And coup de grace as well, basically taking the second part of Triumph's passive, making it into its own rune, or Triumph's description, I should say, of the rune, making it into its own rune, which allows you to deal 7% bonus adaptive damage when enemies drop below 40% health. Fantastic. Alacrity can give you attack speed. Tenacity can just give you tenacity and soul resist, which I think is going to be very important. And Omnivamp is going to be your bloodline option. So there's so many different options here for precision tree, which I think is why precision tree is going to be the go-to. For the secondary rune, I think it's very interesting. I think your standard go-to for secondary is just going to be bone plating. I just think bone plating is very powerful, especially in a meta where we've got so many AD assassins, so many AP assassins, so many bruisers that are going to jump on top of us as an AD carry main. And also bone plating in the lane phase can also be really good when you're trading against other enemy champions. And if you don't have bone plating and an enemy does have bone plating, then I think they're going to get a little bit of an advantage when trying to trade in the early game. So I think the bone plating is just going to be your go-to for secondary rune, except for one champion, which is Nilah, which will go second wind, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. But you do have some other options here that you can go for if you don't want to go bone plating, if you want to play a little bit more aggressive. Same with primary rune 2. Most champions going to go coup de grace or last stand, but you can go giant slayer, as I mentioned, as a bit of flexibility if you're against some bruisers or tanks. Same with primary rune 3. It's either going to be alacrity or bloodline, with tenacity being everyone's kind of backup if you need it. If you're against a lot of crowd control, then 100% take tenacity. Right, let's go through every single individual champion and let's have a look and see what we're going to go through. I'm going to highlight these champions just so you know like what champion I'm on and what champion I'm up to, just in case you want to skip to any point and you find a different color. That'll do. Nice bright orange. Right, first Akshan. Even though Akshan is not really a duo lane champion, this will still be his setup for duo lane and mid lane. There are some players that still like to play Akshan in duo lane. I think a lot of like the one tricks kind of go for like mid lane as their primary role and then duo lane as their secondary, because Akshan can still work, but you just don't really benefit that much. You really benefit from 1v1 scenarios. But obviously this is duo lane build, very similar to his mid lane build anyway. You know, Kraken Slayer still gonna be really good because it works with your passive, with your double auto attacks, and also with your swing as well. It will also work with Kraken Slayer. Brutal, just for more auto attack damage. You can see most of the champions have Brutal. Brutal is just going to be for more auto attack damage, which is quite nice. Coup de grace could be really nice to deal extra damage to champions when they're low on health, or you can go for Giant Slayer if it gets a lot of tanks. And then I think it's interesting whether you're going to go for Alacrity or Bloodline. I think that's an interesting, I think this is going to be like an interesting topic in general. You know, Alacrity versus Bloodline, which one are you going to go for? I think for most champions you're actually going to go for Bloodline, and the reason being is that we're getting Berserker Greaves as new boots coming into patch 4.3, which is going to give us like 30% attack speed and a little bit of AD. So I feel like if you have 30% attack speed already, then you're going to get 20% attack speed from Alacrity. Then if you have like Lethal Tempo, you get even more attack speed and Phantom Dancer on top of that. So I think there are a lot of champions that are actually going to go for Bloodline for the more scaling, whereas Alacrity is more for like early game. Still can be quite good for early game champions. And that's why I've kind of left it as Alacrity for Akshan, because I think that his early game and get that little bit of attack speed in the early game is going to be really nice. It means that he maybe doesn't even really need to build Phantom Dancer anymore. You can just go for like Shield Bow, Infinity Edge, go for your Armor Pen item, and then go for like other items afterwards. You know, something like Sumper's Fang. I've seen a lot of people build on Akshan, and then you can go for like Berserker Greaves as well if you really want more attack speed. But Akshan never really needs that much attack speed. You know, it's more about the damage because of his swing and also from his double auto attacks. Bone plating is obviously really important during the early game for Akshan, because he's going to be swinging in, whether it be the mid lane or the bot lane. So bone plate is going to be really nice. Or another option is actually Shield Bash. I think Shield Bash, Akshan is one of the champions that can actually use Shield Bash very, very well, because Akshan's passive has a 12-second cooldown and Shield Bash has like a 7-second cooldown. So every single time that you proc your passive, you're going to be dealing more damage. You're going to be dealing an extra damage to that champion. So if you read the Shield Bash description, after receiving a healing or shielding effect, which will come from Akshan's passive, your next attack against the champion will be empowered, dealing a certain amount of damage plus 20% of their bonus. I think this is bonus attack damage, and then plus 10% adaptive damage. So you're going to be dealing a lot of damage, and again, a 7-second cooldown means this will be up every single time you proc your passive. So just dealing more damage in general, I think, could be a great secondary option for the secondary runes if you don't want to go for bone plating. I think that'll be absolutely great. Moving on down to Ashe. I need to make sure I get this right. Yeah, there you go. Moving on down to Ashe. Ashe has always been an interesting spot as a duo lane carry. She's always been like this supportive duo lane carry, and I don't think it will really change too much in the next meta. I still think the Ashe support is probably going to be better, because I think Ashe support has some like really unique interactions with Font of Life and also Revitalize to get some more healing, and then you can go for like something like bone plating and cheap shot with Conqueror, and you can still go for like the support Ashe build. But for duo lane Ashe, we're still going to go for, you know, Lethal Tempo. I still think it's going to be great. Honestly, this could be Conqueror if you're going to go for Berserker Greaves. You can go Conqueror here if you're going to go for Alacrity and Berserker Greaves, because I think Lethal Tempo with Alacrity plus Berserker Greaves is a bit of overkill. So I can actually see this swapping over to Conqueror if you're going to go for Legend Alacrity plus Berserker Greaves. But if you're going to go for like Legend Bloodline, or you're going to go for other boots instead, then, you know, Lethal Tempo could still be a good option. I mean, Lethal Tempo exceeding the attack speed cap is still fine, but there comes a point where you have too much attack speed, and there's a very rare occasion where you're going to be standing still and auto attacking over 2.5 times a second. You know, there's very, very rare occasions where that's going to happen. You're always going to be moving, you're always going to be kiting, you're always going to be put under pressure, and it becomes a point where too much attack speed is actually going to be losing you damage because you're actually not going to be attacking that much during a fight. So sometimes it's better to go for Conqueror, which we'll see on obviously some of the other AD carries later on. So I still think there's a few question marks around lethal tempo and just legend alacrity in general. Brutal will still be pretty good though for Ashe, even though you don't really trade too much in the early game. Brutal will still give you a bit of damage on your auto attacks. Coup de grace is nice to give you more damage, or Giant Slayer if you're against tanks. Legend alacrity, as I said, for the attack speed, or tenacity if you're against crowd control, with bone plating being your secondary rune. Another option is actually cheap shot. I'm very curious to see what the interaction is going to be with cheap shot. Now, if you don't know what cheap shot does, cheap shot is basically when you impair the movement of enemy champions, they take true damage. And now it says it has a 7-second cooldown, but if you don't know, with Ashe, every single time you auto attack, you're slowing, which is impairing the movement. Impairing the movement is anything that's affecting the movement of enemy champions, whether it be a charm, slow, knock up, anything like that. And you're going to be doing true damage to the champions that have been impaired. You know, if your team has crowd control, then it'll probably be the same as well. It'll probably work in the same way, and doesn't seem like it has to be you know, from yourself. But still, Ashe auto attacks every single time she slows, which is impairing. So I'm curious to see if this refreshes every single time you auto attack. If it does, then it's going to be insanely broken on Ashe, and it's definitely going to be a lot better than bone plating. But again, it's something we'll have to test when the patch actually launches. So that's everything about Ashe. As I mentioned, you know, Conqueror probably going to be used as a lethal tempo if you go for alacrity, or if you go bloodline for the healing, you can still maybe go lethal tempo and then go for Berserker Grease. That's also a pretty good option. Caitlyn, again, another champion that you can go for Conqueror, because I feel like maybe lethal tempo might be a little bit too overkill. Actually, saying that, we got bloodline, so if you go lethal tempo plus you go for Berserker Greaves. But the thing is, Caitlyn loves to build Phantom Dancer. See, this is the weird thing, because you have 30% attack speed from Berserker Greaves, you got insane amount of attack speed from lethal tempo, you got like 20% attack speed from Phantom Dancer, plus an extra 20% attack speed. So it needs to be tested to see if it's going to be too overkill to go lethal tempo on some of these champions. But again, brutal for Caitlyn, no surprise, because she loves to auto attack in the early game and use her range to her advantage. Coup de grace could be nice, or Giant Slayer if you're against tanks. Legend Bloodline I think is going to scale a lot better for Caitlyn. It means maybe you don't need to build Bloodthirster, or you could just go for triple vamp if you want to. You go Bloodline, Legend Bloodline with Shield Bow and also Bloodthirster, so all three of them can work completely fine if you want to go for that route. Or you could just skip out Bloodthirster completely and go for another item instead. Maybe another crit item could be used instead for Caitlyn. Don't think there's really too many other options unless you want to go for like another attack speed item. Maybe you just go for like a second attack speed item, or you go for Conqueror instead. Could definitely be the play for Caitlyn. But still, Legend Bloodline I think will be better for her, because she already has a lot of attack speed and a lot of benefits in the early game. Bone plating in, again, a secondary rune if you want to go for that, or you can go for cheap shot. Now, cheap shot, again, the same with Ashe, you know, when the movement is impaired, this will actually work with Caitlyn's third ability and also her traps. So every single time you use a trap on an enemy champion, you're going to be dealing true damage, or anytime you land your third ability, you're going to be dealing true damage. Now, this is on top of the headshot damage that you're going to be dealing from your passive every single time. So I think, again, it could be a really decent alternative route that you can take for Caitlyn instead of going for the defensive option like bone plating. So again, a different options is always what I want to give people. It's just difficult to explain it on the website because I don't have the you know, freedom to give you rune like other options for runes, basically, like I have with items at the moment. I have situational items, I don't have situational runes yet. Kind of working towards it at the moment. Corki dual lane, this is kind of the only unique one really that has like a kind of a different build path in general and just a different play style in general. First strike is going to be very, very strong for Corki because you're going to be poking a lot during the laning phase. You're going to be freely using your ultimate, your first ability, your auto attacks. You can Valkyrie forward, and first strike is just going to give you a lot of gold and a lot of true damage, especially in the early game, which is going to win you a lot of trades. And I think Corki might be one of the best ADC still after the new patch. It already is one of the best ADCs. I think he's just going to get even stronger with First Strike doing really, really well. Triumph is going to be better than Brutal on Corki because Brutal doesn't really give you that much benefit. You don't auto attack too much in the early game with Corki. Most of the time you just poke with your abilities and you last hit and you try and scale with items like Manamune, Trinity Force, Essence Reaver, items like that. So I think Triumph for the healing and also getting the healing and also the mana back, 10% mana back, is going to be pretty helpful for him. We see he can use his abilities more often because he's going to be using a lot of abilities with the Manamune. Coup de grace or Giant Slayer, again, coup de grace if you're not against any tanks, Giant Slayer if you are against tanks. Coup de grace could be quite nice to allow you to do a lot of damage. And Legend Bloodline, some of you might be surprised that I have Legend Bloodline here because on PC League it's only lifesteal that you get, but on Wild Rift it's actually going to give you Omnivamp, which means that Corki is going to be healing from magic damage, from true damage, and also physical damage. You know, all the damage you're going to be dealing from Rift Maker as well, from your abilities, from your auto attacks, all of this is going to be healed with Bloodline, which I think is really huge. It makes Bloodline a lot more viable on some different champions, and one of them champions is Corki. Corki is going to get so much healing now from Legend Bloodline as it scales into the mid and late game, which is going to make Corki even more difficult to kill. Bone plating being your secondary rune. Again, you know, you have another option here which could be Scorch if you want to play more aggressive during the early game and do more damage with First Strike. Then you can use Scorch as like another option. When you have First Strike and Scorch available, you can just poke with your first ability, auto attack a few times, maybe fire out a few rockets to get some true damage and also get a little bit of gold. I think Scorch can definitely be a good option if you want to play more aggressively during the early game. But again, bow plating is normally the next best option. Draven, again, another champion that might have a few different keystones. Conqueror could be good, Crank Slayer could be good. Also Lethal Tempo is very, very good. And the reason why Lethal Tempo is very good is because most of the time we're going to run Bloodline for Draven because we want as much healing pretty much as possible with Draven. Alacrity could be good to get more of an early game power spike for Draven because Alacrity giving you like 3% attack speed is better than 1% Omnivamp in the early game. But Bloodline scales better into the mid and late game. And also with Draven, we're going to be building Bloodthirster, we're going to be building Shield Bow, and Draven is a champion that always wants physical vamp because of the way his axes drop, that he could be caught in very difficult positions. So I think the Bloodline with Lethal Tempo giving you attack speed, because we're not actually going to be building any attack speed in our build. So Lethal Tempo gives us a little bit of attack speed, but also Bloodline just keeps us alive and helps us with the likes of Shield Bow and also Bloodthirster. Brutal as well for early game pressure for Draven's really nice, just still more auto attack damage. And again, Coup de grace or Giant Slayer, depending on what champions you are against. Giant Slayer if you're against tanks, Coup de grace if you're against squishies. Again, obviously make sure you build tenacity if against any crowd control for any of these champions. Bone plating is probably going to be your best option for secondary runes because with Draven you want to trade a lot during the laning phase, you want to try and get kills early on, so bone plate is going to be nice. Or you can go for something like Nimbus Coat to give you more movement speed, so you can kite more often, especially with your axes. It can work quite well with kiting and doing, you know, a lot of damage with that. On to Ezreal. Ezreal kind of similar to Corki in a way where the build and everything is a little bit different. I think Ezreal with Kraken Slayer is probably going to be better than Ezreal with First Strike. It's an interesting one. Maybe First Strike could be good for Ezreal. The thing is that Ezreal doesn't have many ways to actually poke and do a lot of damage. Now, if you compare Corki's first ability to Ezreal's first ability, for example, Corki's first ability doesn't get blocked by minions. Ezreal's first ability does. So if the enemy champions are standing behind minions, you walk up and you auto attack them, you're not actually going to be getting that many stacks for First Strike. So I think that it's actually better to run it on Corki rather than Ezreal. And in Ezreal, you could just go for more early game pressure and go for Kraken Slayer, because Kraken Slayer does still work on your first ability and what does still work on your auto attacks. You can trade a lot during the early game. And I think this combo with Kraken Slayer plus Brutal is going to be very, very strong, because Brutal can also work with your first ability. Kraken Slayer works with your first ability. Your auto attacks are going to be doing a lot more damage, and I think this actually gives Ezreal a lot more early game pressure and means you can trade a lot more easier. Yes, you're still going to go for Manamune first item, which is not the best first item in terms of being able to get the early game pressure, but I think before then you could definitely win the trades at level 1 and in the early levels, especially with Kraken Slayer and Brutal. I think it's going to be a really, really strong combo. Coup de grace or Giant Slayer, and coup de grace against squishies, Giant Slayer against tanks. Bloodline again is going to give you Omnivamp, so it's going to be healing you from your abilities and also from your auto attacks, which can be really helpful for Ezreal. And then Legend Tenacity, if you're against any crowd control. You might not need Legend Tenacity that much for Ezreal, but I still think it's a good option if you are against a lot of crowd control. Again, Bone Plating as the secondary rune because we're going to be playing more aggressively with Cracker Slayer plus Brutal, or you can go for Mana Flow Band. Mana Flow Band is still a great option for champions that build Mana Immune, because Mana Flow Band is going to give you more mana, and more mana gives you more damage with Mana Immune. So that's another option that you can go for if you don't want to go for the defensive route, which is Bone Plating. Jhin, one of my favorite champions to play. Jhin's a weird one. I actually don't think Jhin hasn't really benefited that much from the runes. I think Jin's in a little bit of a weird spot. Jin's one of the only champions that I was actually thinking of building Gathering Storm on, because Brutal doesn't really do too much. And the reason why Brutal is not really that good for Jhin is because he only has 4 auto attacks, and then he just reloads after time, so he actually doesn't really get a lot of benefit from Brutal. For example, compared to someone like Caitlyn, which is auto attack. So because you're auto attacking a lot, you're going to get more benefit with Brutal, whereas Jhin, you're not really going to get too much. Now, the only way that Brutal can be good is if you get an early game advantage with it. You know, with Brutal, you get a lot of auto attack damage. You can maybe get a few early kills, and you can snowball from there. So I think Jhin is one of the only champions that I was actually thinking of taking Gathering Storm on. But the reason why I didn't take Gathering Storm is I did like a little bit of quick maths. With Brutal, you get 12 damage at level 1, and then you get 19 damage at level 15. So this is basically the damage that you're getting with Brutal. It's basically to do with on level. So you got 12 to 19. So say for example you're like level 8, you're in the middle of the level, you're going to be doing like 15 damage with your auto attacks. Now if you think of that, obviously it's bonus adaptive damage, so it can be potentially reduced by like armor, etc. So say for example you're getting like 15 damage with your auto attacks at level 8, which is roughly, I would say, you would get around 6-7 minute mark, I would say. So about 6 minutes in the game. Every 3 minutes we gain adaptive AD or AP. At 3 minutes we get 2 AD. At 6 minutes we get 5 AD. At 9 minutes we get 9 AD. Wait, was that right? Yeah, 3, 6, 9. At 9 minutes you get 9 AD, and at 12 minutes you get 14 AD. Even at 12 minutes, 14 AD is the only place that it's really going to start to become probably stronger than Brutal. So you kind of have to wait until 14 minutes into the game. Sorry, 12 minutes into the game until Gathering Storm maybe starts to become stronger than Brutal. So I think that you're basically giving up that whole early game pressure for Jhin, which for me is kind of the strong part about Jhin. You know, Jin's early game is very strong. You kind of want to make full use of the damage, and especially his 4-shot, because it guarantees the crit and does a lot of damage. So I think Brutal just has a slight edge over Gathering Storm. Again, you got Fleet Footwork here, which is going to be the same rune, because we're going to go for crit Jhin, Coup de grace or Giant Slayer, depending on what you want. Coup de grace for the damage when enemies are low, Giant Slayer against tanks. This is an interesting one. Primary rune 3. I've gone for Bloodline. Now, I'm not too sure how this interaction is going to work, because Jhin is currently bugged completely with how AD gets converted into attack speed, because Lord Dominic's Regard still doesn't work. So I'm curious to see if Legend Tenacity, the attack speed that you get from Legend Alacrity, sorry, this extra attack speed that you get, is it actually going to convert into AD? Is it not going to be bugged? I'm not too sure. So I'm kind of worried to recommend Alacrity. I can see it being really good if it does work. You know, if the AD gets converted from the attack speed from Alacrity into AD for Jhin, then it gives just Jhin more damage in general, which I think is going to be very good. But Omnivamp is not too bad as well. You know, gaining one Omnivamp and gaining a bunch of Omnivamp over time from killing, you know, champions and minions, etc. Can be good. Means that maybe you don't need to go for like double healing items like Shieldbow plus Bloodthirster. You can maybe go for one or the other, or maybe just none at all. Maybe you have enough healing from the Omnivamp already. So it'd be interesting. It'll probably be Alacrity or Bloodline or Tenacity. Obviously, if you're against any crowd control, then Tenacity is going to be good. With Bone Plating, again, as our secondary rune, or we can go for Nimbus Cloak if we need that little bit of extra movement speed. Onto Jinx, the late game carry herself. I think Jinx is going to be pretty damn good this patch. I think she's going to be benefit a lot from the new runes. Lethal Tempo is going to be great with her. Because obviously she just loves attack speed in general, and attack speed works well with her passive because she gets the crazy amount of attack speed from when she gets a takedown. Brutal is going to be pretty good for Jinx. Again, a champion that you don't really trade with that much, but Brutal just gives you the extra auto attack damage in general. And like I said, if you're taking Gathering Storm, that you're basically giving up the laning phase and you're giving up that early game in the first dragon, which in my opinion, you know, the first dragon and that first, you know, 4 minutes during the game is super important for just the tempo of the game and just Wild Rift in general, because Wild Rift is a lot faster game than PC League of Legends, so we're not really going to be benefiting that much from Gathering Storm compared to like PC League, because we're not going on for 40 minutes. We're only going on for like 15 minutes average per game, 15-20 minutes to 15-20 minutes, which, as I said, you know, once you're past like the 12, 13, 14 minute mark, then, you know, it will definitely be after the 15-minute mark. Like after 15 minutes, then Gathering Storm will definitely give you more AD than Brutal, but it's before then you're actually going to be weaker. And by the time you reach 15 minutes, the game's kind of decided anyway. So it's like, what's the point of going for Gathering Storm? But anyway, Jinx is a late game carry anyway. You can go for Gathering Storm if you want to, but I still think Brutal's better. Coup de grace, again, really nice for Jinx to give her more damage to enemies that are low on health, or Giant Slayer if you're against tanks. Legend Bloodline, I think, is going to be the go-to option. I don't think Alacrity is worth it because we're going for Lethal Tempo, we're going to go for Berserker Grease, and we're also going to go for Phantom Dancer in our build. So I think Legend Bloodline, giving us more healing for Jinx, I think it's going to benefit her a lot and benefit her with her survivability, which is going to be great. Or you can go for Legend Tenacity, obviously, if you're against any crowd control. With Bone Plating, again, as the secondary rune, or you can go for Nimbus Cloak for the extra movement speed, which I think will help Jinx a lot. When she's using Ghost or Flash, you know, getting that extra movement speed for Jinx is quite nice with her kiting. Now, Xayah, this is dual lane Xayah, so this is AD Xayah. This is not AP Xayah. I do have an AP Xayah build rune set up in here if you want to check that out as well. I think it's pretty much the same anyway, so it doesn't actually, you know, do too much difference. Conqueror as our rune, kind of, it's again, it's a difficult one. I know some people love to play Lethal Tempo on Xayah, but honestly, I just think it's way too overkill. I think Lethal Tempo plus Berserker Grease plus Phantom Dancer is way too overkill. I think you get enough attack speed from Phantom Dancer, from Berserker Grease that we're going to be going on Xayah now, and also her third ability. Remember, her third ability gives her like 40% attack speed, so the extra damage that you get from your abilities and your auto attacks from Conqueror is going to be a lot more beneficial, trust me. Brutal is still going to be great for Xayah because she still likes to trade a lot during the laning phase, would just give her more damage in general. Coup de grace is really nice against enemies that are low on health, or Giant Slayer if you're against tanks. Legend Bloodline for the Omnivamp. Honestly, the Omnivamp with Conqueror plus Bloodline is going to be very, very strong with Xayah because she heals a lot from her abilities, especially her first ability. If you can find an isolated target and if you can use your first ability, then you're going to be healing a lot. Like a lot, because it does a lot of damage. So I think Legend Bloodline for the healing plus Conqueror, very, very nice combo for Xayah. Again, we're still going to have enough attack speed anyway with Phantom Dancer and also Berserker Grease. Obviously, go Tenacity if you're against any crowd control, with Bone Plating or Nimbus Cloak as your secondary rune, which I've kind of already explained. Most of these are going to be, you know, Bone Plating and Nimbus Cloak anyway. So I kind of already explained why Bone Plating and Nimbus Cloak could be pretty good. Lucian, obviously Lucian has kind of fallen off the meta a little bit at the current stage of the meta. I don't know if that's going to change next patch. I think it'll be a little bit interesting with the way Lucian might work. Obviously Kraken Slayer is still going to be your go-to rune because it just benefits so well with Lucian's passive and just the way Lucian works in general. Brutal is also going to be nice. You know, the great thing about Lucian now is you're going to be able to run Brutal and also the second part of Triumph's passive, which is Coup de grace, which is actually going to give you a lot of damage in general. So I think the Lucian might be quite good. Obviously go for Giant Slayer if you're against tanks. Legend Bloodline is going to be better than Alacrity because Legend Alacrity attack speed for Lucian you don't really need, and I don't think it's worth getting attack speed for Lucian. You already have attack speed from Solari Charge Blade that you're going to go, which is a core item, and to be honest, you're probably not even going to go for attack speed boots. You'll probably go for the armor pen boots instead, because again, Lucian just scales better with attack damage rather than attack speed because his abilities and everything will do more damage. Or obviously go Tenacity if against crowd control. With Bone Plating, again, for early game Lucian is really, really nice. Or Nimbus Cloak for the extra movement speed. Misfortune is... Misfortune's never been a good ADC for a long time now. I don't think that will change this patch. Kraken Slayer is still going to be your go-to rune because Kraken Slayer works with her first ability and just her auto attacks in general do a lot of damage. That on top of Brutal is going to be very, very nice. You know, Kraken Slayer plus Brutal is a great combo, and Brutal also works with her first ability. Coup de Grace as well, again, it's going to be a really good combo. I think Kraken Slayer Brutal plus Coup de Grace is going to be absolutely insane during early game. Like, you're going to be doing a lot of damage to pretty much every champion in the early game. So I think that this could be a really, really good combo. Obviously, go for Giant Slayer if you don't want, if you're against tanks, so you don't need Coup de Grace. And then Ledger Bloodline. Again, Misfortune is another champion that doesn't really benefit a lot from attack speed. You kind of already have, you kind of can go for one attack speed item in the build already. But again, you don't need the attack speed from, you know, for Misfortune in the early games. So the extra scaling and the extra Omnivamp from Bloodline is going to help Misfortune a lot with sustaining during the laning phase and also during fights, with Bone Plating and Nimbus Cloak being one of your 2 secondary runes again. On to Nilah, the new champion that's going to be releasing, I believe it's the 21st of June, if I remember, a couple of days after the new patch. I already have a rune set up. I've already done some research on her and everything. I didn't play her too much into PC League because she came out after I kind of quit. Well, not didn't quit, but like I kind of slowed down and stopped playing. So I haven't played her too much. I played her like once or twice, but not really that many times. Conqueror is going to be great with Nilah. She is a melee champion. She's a kind of like Samira in the way where she likes to dash in, she likes to go into melee range, she benefits a lot from any like shielding or healing effects or anything like that, so that could be really, really nice for her. So Conqueror is going to be great with her for extra healing and also extra damage that can be stacked up quite easily. Brutal you don't need with Nilah, and you're never going to benefit from Brutal with Nilah because you're not going to be auto-attacking enemy champions at all during the laning phase because you are a melee champion. So you're never going to walk up, you're never going to auto-attack, so it's a lot better to actually go for Triumph for the extra healing when you're getting takedowns, which I think is going to benefit you a lot more than Brutal. Again, you're not going to auto-attack that much, so I don't think there's any point. One of the 2 only champions that are building Last Stand is Nilah as well. You can go for Coup de Grace if you want to deal more damage to enemies at low on health, but I think with you being a melee champion, I think there's going to be more cases where you're going to be dropping low on health rather than the enemy dropping low on health. And if you drop low on health with Last Stand, then you're going to be dealing more damage. So I think that on top of being able to heal up as well, because we're going to be building a lot of healing and shielding with Nilah, then Last Stand is probably going to be better than Coup de Grace. But obviously build Giant Slayer against a few tanks with Legend Bloodline. No surprise there with the healing with Nilah. It's going to be working very, very well with her. And also you have the Tenacity option if you're against crowd control. Since Nilah is a melee champion, I'm pretty sure Second Wind will work on her. I'm not 100% sure. I need to test it out, obviously, when Nilah gets released. But I'm pretty sure Second Wind will work on her, which means that she'll be able to heal up double because she'll be a melee champion, kind of similar to how it works in with Baron Lane melee champions like Fiora, Camille, etc. So Second Wind will be great for her because you're going to be poked a lot and you're going to be taking a lot of damage during the laning phase. So I think Second Wind will benefit her a lot. And Sudden Impact is a really good second option because Nilah's going to be dashing a lot. You're going to be dashing in, dashing out. Every single time you dash, you're going to be getting the armor penetration, which is going to help you just deal a lot more damage in general. Another good option actually is Revitalize. You can go for Revitalize for just more healing and shielding effects in general. I think Revitalize can definitely be another good option because you're self-healing, so Revitalize could be a good option. I think Sudden Impact is just a better option because you just get more damage in general. Samira is basically the same as Nilah. Conqueror, Triumph, again, same reason as Nilah, is that Samira doesn't really auto-attack champions during the early game because of her low range, and you're not really gonna get any benefit from Triumph from Brutal at all. So Triumph, especially with her ultimate and her getting her resets, is really, really nice for Samira. I think Triumph with the healing, with the mana heal as well, so you can use your abilities more often. You're going to be dashing with your resets, you're going to be using your ultimate, doing huge AoE damage. So Triumph with the healing is going to be great. On takedown, Last Stand again for Samira, kind of the same thing as Nilah. You're going to be dashing into melee range, you're going to be taking a lot of damage, so I think you're going to be low on health more than you're actually going to be healthy enough to benefit more from Coup de Grace when enemy champions are low on health. So I think Last Stand is going to be a better option, or Giant Slayer if against tanks, with Legend Bloodline again being our third rune option, because again, you don't really need attack speed at all with Samira. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth to go for attack speed on Samira. So Legend Bloodline is the better option for more Omnivamp. These two with Nilah and Samira both going Bloodline is going to be insanely strong with Conqueror. Or Tenacity if you're against crowd control, with Bone Plating, or again Sudden Impact being another aggressive option for Samira, because Sudden Impact, you can dash a lot and also you get resets on your dash, which means that if the cooldown does expire for Sudden Impact and you wait for the cooldown to come back up again, you can dash in with your third ability again, get the armor penetration and do a lot more damage. So I think the Sudden Impact is going to be a great option. Even though Senna doesn't get played in the duo lane that much, I did make a build anyway because technically she is kind of a duo lane champion. I did make a support build for her as well. So the support build I think is fairly similar if I remember. Yeah, it's pretty much the exact same thing, to be fair. Like duo lane, you can go for Bone Plating or something like Revitalize instead. I think Revitalize will be an interesting option for Samira, for Senna, sorry. And the reason being is that with Revitalize, it increases your healing effects as well as like ones that are on you, I'm pretty sure. Gains 5% implication effects when casting heal or shield. So yeah, when you cast heal or shield. So when you're casting your first ability with Senna, not only are you going to be getting extra damage with Kraken Slayer if you auto attack 3 times, which you're going to be doing a lot during the laning phase, by the way. Senna is actually one of the more aggressive duo lane champions and one of the most aggressive supports because of Kraken Slayer, because of Brutal. She can proc both of them with her first ability. So you can get to your 3 stacks a lot quicker with Kraken Slayer. And also you get more damage with Brutal in general. And that's where I think Revitalize is going to come in handy, because Revitalize is going to be increasing the healing on yourself when you're casting your first ability. So you're trading now during the laning phase against champions like Nami, Lulu, etc. You're going to be getting a lot more benefit with Revitalize because you're going to be healing a lot more, which means that you're going to actually be winning a lot more trades in the duo lane, and you're still going to be doing the same amount of damage, which is a lot with Senna. So I think Revitalize could be good. But yeah, going from front to back again, Kraken Slayer really good, as I mentioned, works with your first ability and your auto attack. You're playing super aggressive. Brutal as well. You have quite long range with Senna. You're going to be doing a lot of auto attack damage. Coup de grace for the extra damage to champions who are low on health, or Giant Slayer if you're against tanks or bruisers. Legend Alacrity, I don't think you're going to benefit too much from Bloodline. I think if you want more healing, you just go for Revitalize instead. I don't think the Omnivamp from Bloodline is going to be worth it. I think it's just better to get more attack speed for Senna. Potentially, I'm not too sure. Maybe this is Bloodline, maybe this is not. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe we'll have to test out Senna. It could be Bloodline, it could be Alacrity. I'm not too sure. We'll have to test and see whether it's going to be Bloodline or Alacrity. And then Bone Placing or Revitalize, which, as I mentioned before, can be pretty good with Senna. On to Tristana. One of the carries that's still going to go for lethal tempo, and the reason why you still go for lethal tempo on Tristana, and you're probably going to go for it with Phantom Dancer and also with Berserker Grease, is because of her resets on her third ability. So when you put a bomb on an enemy champion or a minion, every single time you auto attack, it stacks up. If you reach maximum stacks, you get a reset on your jump, your second ability. So attack speed just in general is very, very good for Tristana. She has a lot of range, she has a lot of damage in general. And that's why you still kind of go for lethal tempo, even though your first ability is also going to give you a shit ton of attack speed. So might be a bit overkill, but I think Tristana is one of the only champions that really benefits from a lot of attack speed. Brutal obviously going to be really good for Tristana because of her range and because of how aggressive she can be if she wants to jump in during the early game. You can also get a lot more damage off on your auto attacks, and also when you're trading with your third ability, you're going to be auto attacking every single time, so your bombers are going to do a lot more damage. So I think that's very important. Brutal's still going to be good. Coup de grace against champions, low health champions, and you're going to deal more damage to champions who are low on health, or Giant Slayer if you're against bruisers or tanks. I build a lot of HP. Legend Bloodline is definitely going to be the better option than Tenacity. I don't think you need, Alacrity. I don't think you need any more attack speed at all. I think Lethal Tempo plus Tristana's first ability plus Berserker Grease plus Phantom Dancer is like more than enough, like way more than enough. So I think the healing from Bloodline is going to benefit Tristana a lot more, with Bone Plating being your secondary rune option, or Nimbus Cloak if you want it, the little bit of extra movement speed. For Twitch, this is AD Twitch, which I think is actually weaker than AP Twitch. AP Twitch, I think I did a build for jungle, if I'm not mistaken. Where's Twitch? Yeah, and they did an AP jungle build with, you know, Gathering Storm, Coup de Grace, Legend Bloodline for the, again, this is Omnivamp, so this will still work with the AP damage, and it's Sudden Impact because you can run Gathering Storm plus Sudden Impact now, which I think Sudden Impact is going to be pretty good with Twitch's first ability. When he comes out of invisibility, he's going to be doing a lot more damage. But for the AD version, obviously this is more AD crit attack speed centric Twitch. Lethal tempo is still going to be good. Brutal is still okay. I could see Gathering Storm again being another option for Twitch if you don't want to go for Brutal, but again, it's just a case of when do you want to have your spike, and if you don't have your spike early game, then you're kind of just going to lose tempo in general. So Brutal can still work okay. You can still do a lot of damage obviously with your ultimate when you get extra range, and you still trade a little bit during the laning phase, especially if you use your invisibility well. If you walk up to the laning phase, use your invisibility, you could definitely catch a lot of enemies off guard, and dealing that little bit of extra damage with Brutal could be quite nice. Coup de Grace could do more damage to enemies who are low on health, or Giant Slayer is a good option if you're against tanks or bruisers. Legend Bloodline, again, with lethal tempo, plus Berserker Greaves, plus probably Phantom Dancer that you'll be building. Way too much attack speed in my opinion. So Legend Bloodline for the healing is going to be a lot better option for Twitch. Or Tenacity if you're against crowd control, with Bone Plating and Nimbus Cloak being your secondary option. Bone Plating more defensive, Nimbus Cloak for a little bit of extra movement speed. Varus, now Varus's build has changed pretty much completely in the last patch. You don't go summon area anymore. You don't go for poke Varus anymore, basically. You go for like a mixture of the two, which is like Manamune, Essence Reaver, Riftmaker, Serpent's Fang, Yomu's, them sort of items. But you, like I said, you play it a little bit differently now, because you can go for Conqueror now, and you can gonna get a lot more auto attack damage, especially through Essence Reaver. Sorry, you don't go Yomu's and Serpent's Fang. I don't know why I mentioned that. The build is Manamune, Essence Reaver. You can go for Edge and Knight if you want to play more defensive, but you can go for like Lord Domic's Regards, and also another crit item if you want to so that your Essence Reaver does more damage. Which is still going to give you a lot of poke damage, but also going to give you a lot of auto attack damage at the same time, which is why Conqueror is a very good rune now for Varus, because you're going to be auto attacking a lot. You're going to be stacking up Conqueror, and when you stack up Conqueror, you're also going to be stacking up the Blighted Quiver stacks on your second ability, which means your first ability is going to do a lot more damage, because your Conqueror is going to be fully stacked, your Blighted Quiver is going to be fully stacked, your Riftmaker is most likely going to be fully stacked as well, so your first ability is going to start doing a lot of damage. That's why Conqueror now is used over Summon Eri. Brutal, you're still going to be trading a lot during the laning phase, and I think Brutal is, again, you know, still a better option than Gathering Storm. I think Brutal will allow Varus to win trades during the early game, because you can still win trades if you stack with your Blighted Quiver, your second ability, then use your first ability, which Brutal will help you with that. Coup de Grace, again, will deal damage to champions who are low on health, or Giant Slayer against tanks and bruisers. Legend Alacrity, I probably think is going to be a better option than Bloodline, because we're actually not going to build, we're most likely not going to build Berserker Greaves with Varus. I don't think the attack speed from Berserker Greaves is going to be worth it. We're probably going to be going for the Armor Pen boots with Varus, which means that Legend Alacrity is probably going to give us a lot more benefit to give us that little bit of extra attack speed, which I think is going to be quite nice. And the Omnivamp from Bloodline, I don't think is really going to be worth it. We're not going to be auto attacking too much. We're going to be auto attacking a little bit, but not too much. I'm going to be mainly doing damage with our, you know, first ability and our poke damage. So Alacrity there for the attack speed, so we can stack our Blighted Quiver and just stack Conqueror quicker. But again, Bone Placing, your standard secondary option, or Nimbus Cloak if you want the extra movement speed. Vayne's going to be a cool champion in the next patch. I think there's a lot of cool runes that Vayne's going to benefit a lot from, and also the items in general are going to be very good for Vayne. They're already very good with Vayne. You know, lethal tempo is still going to be great with Vayne. Getting a lot of attack speed for Vayne is super important, because it works with her second ability, allowing to deal more true damage when you auto attack the same champion or unit 3 times in a row. So lethal tempo is still going to be good. Brutal is going to give her some early game pressure, but also allow her to deal more damage in the mid to late stages of the game when she goes for them 1v1 duels. Coup de Grace, allowing Vayne to deal more damage to low health enemies, is going to be super important during the 1v1 duels, or Giant Slayer if you against a lot of tanks or bruisers. And then Legend Bloodline, you can go for Legend Alacrity, which will give you just more attack speed in general. I still think Bloodline is probably going to be okay, because you already have attack speed with lethal tempo. You've got Berserker Greaves. We're going to be going for Shield Bow, which gives us attack speed, Bladed Rune King, which also gives us attack speed, and also Phantom Dancer. So I don't think we need Alacrity on top of that. I'd rather go for Bloodline and go for more healing, which will allow us to sustain during fights. So I think Bloodline is probably going to be the better option than Alacrity. But obviously go Tenacity if you want to. Again, with Bone Plating as our secondary rune or Nimbus Cloak. Xayah, one of my main champions again. I only got 2 champions left. Xayah, dual lane. Conqueror, I think for Xayah is probably going to be the best option because you have your attack speed with your second ability. You're going to have attack speed with Berserker Greaves, attack speed with Phantom Dancer as well. So it's already 3 sources of attack speed. Again, you have to remember Xayah gets attack speed with her second ability, which comes up quite a lot, especially now because you can go Navori Quick Blades probably a lot earlier. You don't even need to go Phantom Dancer second item because you have so much attack speed from Berserker Greaves, so you can go like Shield Bow into Navori and then to Phantom Dancer if you want to go for that route. So I think Conqueror is probably going to be better. Brutal, obviously for trading during the laning phase, it's going to be quite nice, and also Xayah just auto attacks a lot. Coup de grace, which is going to deal damage to low health enemies, or Giant Slayer if against tanks or bruisers. Bloodline, as I mentioned already, with pretty much all the AD carries, you already got a lot of attack speed with all the 3 attack speed sources that I just mentioned. So I think the healing for Xayah is going to be quite nice. You're going to be healing from your auto attacks and also from your feathers, or you can go for Tenacity as another option if you want to, with Bone Plating as your secondary rune standard option, or Nimbus Cloak for the extra movement speed. And then last but by no means least, we have Zeri. Zeri is a champion that I still play quite a lot, and I still think she is going to be great in the next patch. Lethal Tempo, Zeri is one of them champions that doesn't really care too much about attack speed, because her attack speed is going to be, if she goes over the attack speed cap, then the extra attack speed is going to get converted into attack damage for her. So she will never actually exceed the attack speed cap, but she will always benefit from Lethal Tempo, because Lethal Tempo will still exceed the attack speed cap and will still go over the attack speed cap, but Zeri only has a certain attack speed cap and she cannot go over that. So anything over that bar, so say the bar's here, anything over that bar will just be converted into AD basically. So it just means that Zeri in general will just deal more damage. Brutal, really nice for her, allowing her to auto attack and trade during the early game, which would be quite nice, and also deal a little more damage at the late stage of the game. Coup de grace, Giant Slayer. Coup de grace is going to be really nice for her to deal more damage to low health enemies, or Giant Slayer if he gets a lot of tanks and bruisers. Bloodline, definitely going to be better than Alacrity, because Alacrity doesn't really do too much. Yes, it can convert your attack speed into attack damage if you want to, but I think Bloodline, the healing that you get from it, is going to be really beneficial for Zeri, because she is still a low range AD carry at the end of the day, with again Bone Plating and Nimbus Cloak being your 2 secondary rune options. So that is everything for all the AD carry runes. Again, I'm not going to go through every single champion. I will be here for absolute hours. I just wanted to focus on the AD carries, because obviously as an ADC main, and I mainly do ADC content, I wanted to show you all the builds for all the AD carries. But again, if you do want to check out this Google sheet, I will leave the link down in the description. It has all the runes and all the translations for all the new runes. It has all the builds for every single champion, every single role that you're thinking of. Blue Cane, Red Cane, Misfortune dual lane if you want that, Nautilus jungle, Nautilus support with you know, the new glacial augment rune. There's so many champions, so many different runes to go over, that I would be here for absolute ages. But I thought I would give you this content anyway, because I know a lot of people kind of, I guess, rely on me sometimes with in terms of new updates and the website and everything like that. So I wanted to release this video to give you all a head start, because the update will be happening on the website probably the night of the update itself, so it might not all be ready for when it goes live. So I thought I'd give you this video, and I give you this spreadsheet as a different alternative if you want to go for the spreadsheet, and you can use this kind of to help you for the new season. But anyways, as always, appreciate you all watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the content. Stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next one video. Peace.